So this week we learned about different methods to kind of be more reflective about daily teaching practices and things like that. Um, One of the things that I've used in my own fairly limited personal teaching experience is observation. So I worked on a team that would teach um, first year writing information literacy classes. So we would have these classes for a week. And then frequently at the beginning of the semester, we would observe each other. Everyone on the team would kind of observe each other and then give feedback to each other. Uh, Regarding what was working, what maybe wasn't, where you saw students maybe losing focus or attention or motivation, and then we would all discuss and kind of collaborate how to maybe ameliorate some of those issues that we each have. And it's similar to kind of an audio recording in that you get a more objective view of how you're running your class and how you're running your lessons and timing them and things like that. It was also really useful for me because I have some, nervous tics, especially at the beginning of the semester. When you're kind of getting into the routine. I say sometimes I'll like to say right, at the end, and so just being more aware of those things so that you can. Kind of nip them in the bud as you're in it, as you're in the teaching situation. You can kind of then think more on your feet because you've become aware of those situations. I like the idea of journaling and self-reflection, but I think I mentioned this in my written reflection too. Self-reflection can only take you so far. Sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees, and so it's hard to always be objective in your own self-assessment. I like the idea of observation and also audio recordings, and getting feedback, and maybe a combination of all of these is really the better or best way to really kind of get a more holistic view of your teaching style and practices, and what's working and what's not for students and for you, for yourself, and for the overall curriculum. So let's see. So to discuss my answers on page 14 and 15, I chose scenario A and scenario D. Scenario A, just to refresh memory, talks about student attitudes for English. And how you can, decide over the course of a semester if the way that you're teaching and the strategies you're using are improving kind of students' positive attitudes, which could increase motivation and things like that. But measuring their attitude over the course of a semester, I chose surveys or questionnaires, like student surveys or questionnaires, because, like I mentioned before, a teacher can't always be objective. A teacher can't always see necessarily how a student is feeling, and a teacher's beliefs or biases could affect how she perceives or feels about the student attitudes. So it seems like the most accurate way to capture that data is to have the student self-report. That being said, there's obviously some well-known issues with self-reporting. There may be, a student feeling like they need to give the correct answer to make the teacher feel good. Maybe they like the teacher and they don't want to be like, I'm not down with this, and they don't want to hurt her feelings or something. But and on the opposite end of that spectrum, maybe they don't like the teacher and they're just gonna say mean things all semester, and it's not gonna be really accurate reflection of the teacher's strategies or approaches or skills. That being said, it seems like it would be more accurate than the teacher just trying to record or guess what the student attitudes are. And it seems to me, you can, with data analysis and things like that, if you want to take it that far, you can kind of eliminate those outliers, right? And work with that middle ground, and then just see, what the students feel like their attitude is throughout the semester. So I felt like that was the best solution in scenario A. The other scenario I chose was scenario D, which had to do with a teacher and her language, her teacher's English. And for me, again, that seemed like something that needed to have a more objective data collection method, if you will, than self-reporting on the teacher's part. In order to, it's kind of like, second language acquisition theory, where you talk about noticing. And now this isn't a second language, but maybe you don't always notice the words that you're using, or you don't notice the tone that you're using, because you've just kind of gotten into this routine of using it. And so recording yourself on audio or video, I think, can give you a more realistic view of what you're saying and doing in that moment, because when you're in that moment and you're energized and you're teaching and things like that, sometimes maybe your language goes on autopilot. And so recording that will help you kind of identify those language markers. If you wanted to, with an audio and video recording, if you really wanted to get deep, you could transcribe it and code it and tag it for marked language. You could do the same with students, maybe see what their reaction is over the course of a semester if you're able to identify that marked language, and if you decide you need to maybe change it or tweak it a little bit and use different words or different sentence structures and things like that. But again, I think it's difficult to get an objective, accurate view on like a self-assessment of your use of language. So that's what I answered for scenario D. Good readings this week. Looking forward to talking to everybody next Friday, and I will see you all soon. Thanks.